or moneyless. If you acquire from the private owners, then you go to the government for documentation. Getting your documentation out from the government is not the easiest.
And this is a government that says it wants to help us build a million houses a year.
Yes.
They're still putting roadblocks for you.
Yes, that's exactly. No, the Nigerian system which we are in comes to play in everything that you do. And of course, and that is one of the few challenges that developers could face. If the process of documentation, owning a land, acquiring land can be streamlined and made so straight and easy for people, for let's say a serious developer anyway, I would suggest if government can say, all right, for you to have requested for CFO or any form of documentation on the land for development, let them visit the site for the development. After visitation, okay, they can now determine what facility, infrastructure is required on the site. Then when that is identified, then the government can cost it, provide all these facilities to encourage the developer, and at the same time they can then cost and spread the cost over a period of time which the developer can remit to the government.
Okay. Mr. Makwade,
yes.
Another big issue is the issue of funding. Building houses is not cheap, and banks are not willing to lend long term. You can't build a house this year and get your money back this year. So what is happening in that area, in the area of funding? The mortgage bank, any help?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Housing. I mean, obviously, architects have said quite a lot, and the truth is, yes, there are steps in the right direction. But again, to the man on the street, really, the question then is, I'm not feeling the impact of these policies. And I think one of the take-homes, really, for those in government, which again, like he says, is close to the corridor of power, is that we've got to accelerate things so that the man on the street can feel. And for me, as we were speaking, I was noting a few things. And part of the things why the man on the street may not be able to feel the impact of those policies very readily, of course, you've mentioned it, is the lack of long-term funds. And because, truth is, you cannot blame the banker if he's only got short-term funds, and what he's got is what he's going to be able to lend. So it's ridiculous in this country when you talk about you're having a mortgage loan and you're talking about repayment in 5 years. I don't understand how that is. I mean, so which is what the commercial banks will give you. So yes, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done in that area, and I know there have been movements in that area as well with the mortgage liquidity company and a few reforms. Maybe he will be able to
the mortgage refinancing.
Yeah, mortgage refinancing company, and obviously I know that CBN is now doing what they did with the banks, with the mortgage banks now, getting them to consolidate, so they can have a deep pocket, a larger pool. But I must say it's regrettable actually that the Federal Mortgage Bank really is not got a deep pocket at all. And so that's one of the first things I would want to see if to be consistent with the policy. So if you say, I'm glad you clarified, because I've always wondered when you say 1 million houses in a year. I mean, the first thing that comes to my head is, where is even the supply chain to meet 1 million houses in a year? Where is the infrastructure? Not even the housing infrastructure now, but where is the infrastructure in the nation to even meet the supply chain of 1 million houses in a year? So so reality many times is, even if you have all the money on the table, you will still encounter a lot of constraints, because we don't have the rail that normally would have been used to transport a lot of heavy equipment and heavy goods. Everything, we only rely on the roads, which is again the problem with our roads, the situation with the bad state of our roads, So, but anyway, coming again to finance. So one of the things we want to see again is, you want to see the government deepening the capital base of the Federal Mortgage Bank. That's something that you would really want to see, because the only real income for the Federal Mortgage Bank is the NHF. I mean, you agree with that. And when you look at the classification of Nigeria, where it's hugely informal, how much really, I mean, they get some sizable, yes, you will say, but when you look at it in the context of 160 million people, in the context of 17 million housing deficit across the country, what they get is peanuts. Because again, and that again is a classification of, when you look at the formal sector to the informal sector, it's about 30 to 70. 30 formal, informal sector 70. So, and the only way they can get the NHF funds is from the formal sector. So really and truly, one of the first things I would want to see is the government setting up some bit of, deepening the pocket of Federal Mortgage Bank, and they've done it in different other sectors.
Yeah, if I may just give information there. Okay.
Private mortgage banks.
Yeah, with the private mortgage banks, of course, that's what the CBN is trying to do now in terms of consolidation. So getting them to come together and then obviously pulling investor funds to come into that, just the same way we had with the commercial banks. The other thing, though, that is still a maze to everybody is the pension funds. The pension funds, it's growing. At my last check, I think it was some billion, I don't even know.
Trillion.
Because I think it was $1 billion. It was some $16 billion, I think it was, which if you convert to Naira, is in trillion. And that money is just sitting there. Now, I can understand the concerns of CBN in saying, no, we cannot allow you, the strict rules in saying we can't allow you to just dip into that, because you don't want what is even going on with the pension scam in the government institutions to happen there. You don't want the money to just vanish, But I think, because that's again where all developed world, that's one of the surest ways of getting long-term capital.
Tapping into it.
Yeah.
Use it
for development. Exactly. So it's just about you creating the right frameworks, tightening some
the right set of laws.
Make sure there are no loopholes.
Exactly. Tightening against loopholes and proper monitoring of the pension managers, and we should be able to tap a lot of that money into housing development.
I wanted to take you back to the issue of an issue was just raised now by Loide here, Mr. Loide. The issue of the Land Use Act. In terms of the policies that your group or the team that you were part of has delivered to the government with regards policy. Where is the situation? What's the position of government now regarding the Land Use Act and access to land for those who are developers?
Two things, and Nigerians must really get these right. The issue of the Land Use Act is a constitutional matter. There's absolutely nothing that government can do. The National Assembly has to amend the Constitution. And the process of constitutional amendment, we all know what it's like. So to get around that, like in the presidential summit that we had, there were several governors involved. So Mr. President was able to pull the governors together and say, gentlemen, this matter is in your purview. What can we do? We highlighted the 1, 2, 3 major headaches of the Land Use Act, because the Land Use Act in principle is good. I'll tell you. Number one, the title that he's talking about, your C of O. There's no time frame. Some people have requested for a C of O for the past 10 years. They've not got it. Without a C of O, you cannot have any transaction with any funding institution. That's number one. The second one is that even when you have the C of O and you have a transaction, okay, you've been given a C of O, you use that C of O to get a mortgage from this man. Now, you finish that transaction, you've paid him back, you've got back your C of O. You now want to have another transaction with the lady. You must go back to the governor and get another governor's consent to do that transaction. So we said, if you've given a man a car, allow him to sell his car to whoever he wills. And let that man sell it to whoever he wills. You don't need to come and ask me again, should I sell the car to Mr. B, or should I even loan the car, not even a sell in this time? Can I use my car to borrow something from? So those were the two things. So the governors themselves said, look, we need to cap ourselves to a processing time for C of O. let's say 3 months, let's say 6 months. The governors are working together on that. The second thing is the process of revalidating a title for another transaction. We thought, look,